Hi, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to my presentation. This is Birasha Aranno, ID 024 triple two triple zero five three four three zero one three, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present uh, my presentation. So today, my presentation topic is risk management in cybersecurity strategies and framework. So at first, we need to know what is risk management. So cybersecurity risk management is the process of identifying an organization's digital assets, reviewing existing security measures, and implementing solutions to either continue what works or to mitigate security risks that may pose threats to a business. So the three main stages of risk management are risk identification, assessment, and control. So what is risk identification? Risk identification is the process of documenting any risk that could keep an organization or program from reaching its objective. It's the first step in the risk management process, which is designed to help companies understand and plan for potential risk. Examples of risk include theft, business downturns, accidents, lawsuits, or data breaches. And the next part is risk assessment. So, what is risk assessment? So, it is the identification of hazards that could negatively impact an organization's ability to conduct business. These assessments help identify these inherent business risks and provide measures, processes, and controls to reduce the impact of these risks to business operations. And then also, companies can use a risk assessment framework, which we can call RFA, in short, to prioritize and share the details of the assessment, including any risks to their information technology, that means IT infrastructure. The risk assessment framework helps an organization identify potential hazards and any business assets put at risk by these hazards, as well as potential fallout if these risks come to fruition. And then comes risk control. So risk control, a crucial part of the risk management process, is a business strategy that allows organizations to evaluate potential losses and take action to reduce or eliminate those risks. It aims to identify, assess, and prepare a company for any threats that may interfere with corporate operations or the organization's ability to pursue financial goals and other objectives. Then, risk management strategies. The first one is avoiding risk. So, avoidance is an option that works to remove the chance of a risk becoming a reality or posing a threat altogether. If a product or service poses more risks than benefits, then it may behave an organization not to invest in that product or service. If there are geopolitical risks that can threaten an organization's projects, it may be a better choice to avoid those risks and select a different region to launch a project. An avoidance strategy shouldn't necessarily be used with frequency or for longer term threats. Eventually, this response should be re-evaluated to find other sustainable risk responses that address underlying issues. Accepting risk. Sometimes avoidance isn't an appropriate response, and acceptance may be the better practice. When a risk is unlikely to occur, or if the impact is minimal, then accepting the risk might be the best response. Timing also plays a role. It could be that a risk doesn't pose any imminent concern or it won't impact your company's strategic outlook. One example of this might be a change to vendor pricing down the road. This does pose a financial risk, but is nearly unavoidable. Vendor prices inevitably increase. It's important to keep re-evaluating these types of risks periodically. Their impact on your company and its projects could change. Mitigating risk. Mitigating risk is the most commonly discussed risk response. However, it isn't always practical or possible. It may be the best option if a risk poses a real threat or problem and evidence or acceptance on surface. If a risk creates a negative impact and one that could be costly to your company, employees, vendors, or customers, then that risk should be mitigated. This means identifying the risk, assessing all possible solutions, devising a plan, taking action, and monitoring the results. Then, transferring risk. There are often challenges or issues arise, and you or your team may not be able to avoid, accept, or mitigate them. One example may be a lack of expertise or training required to address the risks. In this case, it may be a good idea to outsource or transfer the risk to another party, sometimes in house, sometimes from an external third or fourth party. Some risk can also be transferred to an insurance company, which may reimburse organizations for certain realized risks. So this is the overview of risk management framework. So we can see the first option is identification, then we can see measurement and assessment, then mitigation, then reporting and monitoring, and then governance. So these are the five factors which are very much concerned about risk management. So the first one is risk identification. The first part of a risk and control framework is to perform risk identification. This involves defining your risk universe, which refers to all the possible risks the business may face. There are several types of risks that businesses face, include internal weaknesses and outside factors. Be sure to account for all of them in your analysis. Some examples of risk include operational risk, legal risk, IT risk, and regulatory risk. In your risk identification, take into consideration internal and external vulnerabilities, potential threats, the impact of these identified risks, the likelihood that these risks may occur, and the internal conditions that predispose the business to risk. Then, risk measurement. Use the information from your risk identification to rank the risks according to which ones need addressing the most. Doing so creates a risk profile that you can consult routinely and use to target a risk one by one. Keep in mind that some risks are easier to measure than others. For instance, it's much simpler to measure market risk than it is to measure operational risk. Some businesses usually measure and order their risks according to the profit and loss associated with each one. Risk mitigation. Work your way through your list of risks, starting with a lot those at the top. Note down ways to mitigate the threats and what actions the company needs to take to do so. Some risk mitigation strategies include insurance, diversification, the sale of assets or liabilities, and hedging with derivatives. It's important to note that some risks are minimal and not worth addressing. Determine when on your list to stop writing down mitigation factors. This cutoff point is arbitrary and likely to differ between businesses. Additionally, use the risk mitigation phase to decide what core risks you want to retain. Then risk reporting and monitoring. Keep a list of known risks and monitor them. Report on specific and aggregate risks at regular intervals to ensure that proper mitigation strategies are in place and work to reduce them. Some businesses may want to create risk reports daily, such as finance or investment companies. Businesses may have risk team or personnel who can adjust the company's risk exposures and monitor them accordingly. Then, risk governance. This is the final component of a risk and control framework and involves codifying all the steps above into our risk governance system. This system creates a set of guidelines and processes for employees to follow in accordance with the risk and control framework. It ensures that all company members follow the correct procedures when encountering risk and dictates who has authority when it comes to managing risk exposure. A risk governance system also outlines risk limits, risk report protocols, and access to risk limits. So, thank you so much.